All right, today we are going to dig into something that can be, well, kind of tricky: self-sabotage. But here's the thing: we're not going to treat it like some big personal flaw. Nope. Think of it more like a hidden pattern, a code that we can actually crack. And once you see it, you can start to change it. So let me ask you something right off the bat, especially if you're one of those people who's super driven, really ambitious, always pushing for more. Have you ever considered that your greatest strength, that incredible drive, might also be the very thing that's tripping you up? It's a huge paradox, and it's exactly what we're getting into today. And that right there, that's what we call the overachiever's paradox. This is for anyone who's ever felt like they're just running and running on a hamster wheel they built themselves. You're working harder and harder, but you never really feel like you're getting anywhere satisfying. Okay, and this is so important to get. Self-sabotage is not about being weak or lazy. Not at all. It's much more useful to think of it as a coping mechanism. It's a protective strategy your brain came up with, probably a long, long time ago, to deal with a really fundamental fear. And when we see it that way, we can kind of drop the shame and just get curious about what's really going on under the hood. And what's at the very heart of this whole pattern for the overachiever? Well, it's this incredibly powerful and often totally unconscious belief: I have to do everything perfectly to matter. This isn't just about wanting to do a good job. This is about your entire sense of self-worth being completely tangled up with being flawless. And man, that is an impossibly high bar to clear every single day. Okay, so what does this actually look like in real life? This next part is kind of like our diagnostic toolkit. We're going to lay out all the specifics of this pattern so you can just hold it up like a mirror and see if any of it feels familiar. So, who is the overachiever? I mean, we're not just talking about someone who's ambitious. We're talking about someone who is fueled, really driven by a deep need for external validation. You know, the praise, the awards, the recognition. But here's the catch, right? Even when they get it, the satisfaction it doesn't last, because the exhaustion is always there. It's this relentless, draining hunt for enough. So, does any of this start to ring a bell? Let's run through some common symptoms. That feeling of perfectionism that just freezes you. Or how about overcommitting until you literally dread looking at your own calendar? Then there's the inevitable burnout, which leads to this deep frustration that you're not getting more done. And all of it is sitting on top of this baseline of just constant stress. See, these aren't just a collection of bad habits. They're all symptoms pointing to the same underlying pattern. Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting. None of this is random. These behaviors, they're part of a cycle, a totally predictable, repeatable loop. And once you understand the mechanics of that cycle, that's when you can finally figure out how to interrupt it. It's not magic, it's mechanics. And this lays it out perfectly. Look, it all kicks off with a trigger, right? That nagging fear of not being good enough, of being seen as incompetent. So what's the behavior? You overcompensate. You say yes to everything. You set these impossible goals. And for a minute, you get this little hit of relief. People are impressed. You feel important because you're so busy. But it never lasts, because it's always followed by the consequence: total burnout, stress, resentment. Which, of course, just feeds that original fear, and boom, the cycle starts all over again. So how in the world do we get off this merry-go-round? Let's talk about the escape hatch. And the good news? It's not about blowing up your whole life. It starts with something much, much smaller and way more powerful. This ancient symbol, the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, it captures this perfectly. On one hand, it's that self-sabotage cycle, right? A loop that just feeds on itself. But it also stands for something else: rebirth, renewal. That very same energy you're pouring into this destructive loop can be pointed in a whole new creative direction. And this, right here, might be the most important thing to take away from all of this. Just the act of seeing the pattern, of recognizing the trigger, the behavior, that fake sense of relief, and the inevitable consequence as it's happening, that is the single most powerful first step you can take. It's the tool that breaks the machine. You can't change a pattern you don't even know is there. So I want to leave you with this question. Now that you can see the cycle, now that you see how the machine works, what's the one tiny little domino you can push over to start disrupting it? It doesn't have to be some huge dramatic change. Seriously. Maybe it's just pausing for 3 seconds before you automatically say yes to a new request. Or maybe it's redefining what perfect even means for just one small task. What's your first move?